I really want to say something more than, hey, welcome to another exciting episode of No Driving Gloves, but it's another episode of No Driving Gloves, and it should be exciting. All three hosts will be here eventually tonight. Obviously, I'm here, John. Derek Moore is joining us from the NAMS convention up in South Bend, Indiana, so his sound quality might be a little bit different, but we think we have all that worked out.
I'll have an Indiana accent tonight.
Yes, he's getting more back to no pun intended, getting more back to his native lands. And then we should be joined by Will in a few minutes. He's running a little bit behind, and he's also got a new broadcast location. So hopefully we can get him to join in with not too much difficulty, not too many difficulties. However we want to say that, preferably in some form of the English language. How busy have you been, Derek?
Way too busy. Obviously missed missed last week's podcast because of something that came up. As we say, just the way life comes up sometimes. But other than that, then I'm traveling this week, as we've already discussed. I'm up in the actually very cool town of South Bend, Indiana. Of course, a great automotive history here in South Bend. And actually, this is the first time I've ever actually been in South Bend, Indiana, and stayed here for a long period of time. You know, you drive by or drive through occasionally, but don't really pay attention. And I have to say that the town is actually a very, very cool town. A lot of great things going on here. And of course, the reason the NAM conference is here, the great automotive history here, of course, being the legacy of Studebaker and the Studebaker National Museum that's located here in town. So really having a good time. It's actually, although very busy, I'm doing 2 presentations at the conference. Already have one done, and the second one is tomorrow, but it's a bit relaxing because I'm out of the office and able to, talk with colleagues from other museums and really, discuss the things that we all enjoy discussing as automotive historians and museum folk.
I always like South Bend, and of course, it's for those of us that are geographically challenged. It's just down the road from Auburn, Indiana, and obviously Auburn, Cord, Duesenberg, and things like that. I have family up in South Bend. Hi, Rose and Jim. I think you listen to the podcast occasionally. It's a pretty area of Indiana. I always like it. I always want to make it up to that. And if I was still doing the museum thing, I probably would have made the NAMS conference. It would kind of be odd for a barber employee to be at the National Association of Automotive Museum conference, but I could have been there. I could have potentially had free lodging, just missed out on those late night parties. Derek needs to get this show over and go drinking with all of his friends.
Can we get this on the road? They're all waiting for me at the bar. Let's go.
Derek's worried he left his card running a tab, and who knows what he's drinking while he's talking to you guys.
Exactly.
So, like I said, I really I enjoy that area, Indiana. There's a really good restaurant that I found last time I was at Auburn, and I need to look. And after last week's show of talking about, hey, is there too many shows? Is there too many concours? Maybe I need to put Auburn on that calendar. But since you're up there enjoying that, obviously I've just been busy this week, still developing the business. Business is kind of telling me what it wants to do, and I'm trying to tell the business what I want it to do. I'm not too sure, but should be having some exciting news and possibly some might drop a few plugs here in the near future for the business. But we're not here to talk about my business. We're really not here to talk about Derek's job. Yeah, we are, I think, because we're all in the car realm, right?
And I mean, come on, my career is so interesting. Everyone wants to know.
So, and then I'm getting a couple of texts here from Will. I think he's having a little bit of trouble with his new computer rig and that. And since we've started the show, we might miss him this week, and we'll figure it out. And then he's taking next week off. He's as Derek complains, and Will's taking another vacation. But I stopped by, saw him on Tuesday. He was working his butt off. His shop was full, at least 6, 8, 10, 12, probably 12 projects ongoing in the shop. And I think we'll have some conversations about that in the future because they're doing some things correctly. Wide bodies the way wide bodies should be done, not the Chrysler way of tacking on some fender flares, and not the Liberty Walk way of, hey, let's rivet on some Ranchero 4x4 fenders and call it a wide body, but actually reforming the panels and making it a wide body. But that's not where our topic's going to go tonight. On the heels of last week's show, because Derek was a little upset we didn't include him, was to throw out it's something I've been looking at, been paying a lot of attention to auctions and figuring out where I need to be this year for the new consulting business. I honestly don't know if I was selling a car where I'm supposed to sell a car anymore at automobile auction, because it seems every weekend there's the latest and greatest auto auction, and the catalogs come out 3 weeks or 4 weeks in advance because everything's gone digital. I remember 10 years ago, everything came printed, and you would get 1 or 2 months notice on an auction, and you could sit there and, unless you're a billionaire collector who can buy 12, 18 cars a year, I got to, even at, you got to select 1 or 2 cars you might want this year or what your budget is. And so you look at the catalog right now that gets emailed to you today for an auction in late April, and you go, oh, that's the car I want, and you make all your travel arrangements, and in 2 weeks you get another catalog and go, oh, wait, I've been wanting one of those even longer. What do you do? Derek, I know you, especially with the upcoming Tupelo, and you've talked about maybe wanting a couple of items from there, and it's kind of Tupelo put this on my radar too. Do you have a clue of what's, auto auctions, and is there any planning, or do you just decide, hey, one day I got 50 grand, what's available in the next month?
Yeah. I don't know where to start here. It's getting too hectic, in my opinion. We've got, as you say, John, so many of them going on. There's, seems to be one every weekend. There's, catalogs are coming out constantly because they're digital. And, being in the automotive museum world, I also have to kind of pay attention to what auctions are out there, what are going on. Not only if I'm looking to, acquire cars for the collection for the museum I'm working for, whatever museum it is, if I'm at the Corvette Museum, when I was at the Crawford Museum, wherever. And there are a lot of them to keep track of. And I constantly keep an eye out on these things, and I learn probably about every week to 2 weeks of a new automobile auction. And maybe it's not new to the automobile auction world, but a new one to me that I've never heard of. Recently, within the last 2 weeks, I think I've discovered 4 that I'd never heard of. They're just small antique classic car auto auction places in various states, and boggles my mind that, and maybe it says a good thing about the collector car community that we try to talk about. Maybe it means it's strong because people are buying and selling these cars, and there's enough collectors out there to make this happen. But I guess we'd have to break down and look at each individual auction's actual results and see how many of those cars truly sold versus how many, didn't get the hammer and sell to a new owner. I think it surely says that there are still a lot of classic and antique cars out there, whether it's, extremely affordable cars, going across the block, let's say, late C3, early C4 Corvettes that aren't worth, the big money yet, all the way up to, all the auctions that happen around Pebble Beach Week, Amelia Island, the Hilton Head Concours, that you're selling multi-million-dollar automobiles every year. And I mean multiple times a year because, Amelia happens and then Pebble and all these different shows. It's hard to keep track of. I mean, hopefully it means that the hobby is strong. That's what I hope.
I think that's one thing it does. It means the hobby's strong. There's a lot of cars. It's kind of like Will and I determined last week with the Concours and the Street Rod Show and Hot Rod Show debate. These cars are these shows are filling up. These auctions are filling up, and the sell-through rates are reasonable. I mean, most places are still running 70 and 80% sell-through rates, which I think is solid. A lot of auctions are still running a lot of things at no reserve. You watch Bring a Trailer, which is a daily auction site, basically. You know, they're probably doing a 70 or 80% sell-through rate. It's just constantly going on and happening. So, you know, I think, yeah, from the aspect, are there cars to populate these auctions? Are they selecting? I'm going through the Bring a Trailer process right now, and it's, you know, I submit everything. I submit 100 photos, whole description of what we're selling, and then I got an email back with 10 more questions. And you know, you got to fill out these questions because they can pick and choose, and they're looking for quality. It's not like eBay where anything just goes, or Craigslist. You know, they pick and choose what goes there, just like, you know, Russo Steel does, just like Barrett Jackson does. Yeah, you know, they you know, they're happy to take your consignment, but they will reject them if they don't fit either what they think the auction profile is. But I just, you know, from a seller aspect, I guess everything's out there, but would the cars be bringing better numbers if things could be narrowed down and people could plan their purchases a little bit better? You know, I want to think back 20 years ago when I was in college with Will, that I could sit there and, you know, I knew what was coming up and what would be at Barrett Jackson just about the time Pebble Beach was ending. But now there's 3 or 4 auctions between the Pebble Beach auction weeks or the California auction weeks and January Arizona auctions. And then right after in January now, we have the Kissimmee auction that runs for almost a week and a half from Mecum in Florida. Then everybody flies out to Arizona, and there's, you know, Barrett Jackson's now a week and a half long, and there's 5 other auctions. And then 2 weeks later, there's another auction. And then 2 weeks later, we have the Amelia Island auction. And 2 weeks later, you know, it's every 2 weeks, every week, there's an auction to go to and cars to buy. And, you know, heck, even TV can't keep up with it. What do we do? I mean, you know, you get on, is it Motor Trend TV now? That's Speed Vision and Velocity and whatever it's called this week. I don't know if Disney's going to change the name now. Disney, when the Fox thing closed. But it's just, there's a Mecum auction, it seems, every couple of weeks. And yeah, it's nice to see all the cars available and changing hands, but I don't know if it says much about car collecting, or is it speculator changing cars with speculator? Is it the same cars running through? Maybe we should have asked Brett this question, Brett Hatfield, because he's an auction analyst with Sports Car Market. But there's just, to me, there's just so much, and it's such a busy field.
Well, I know. Can you hear me?
We got Will.
Hey! I know with being at Barrett Jackson back several months ago, walking through the field and seeing what's there, man, there was a ton of repeat stuff that you saw at, the same auction a year ago. I know of 4 or 5 higher end builds that were that sold last year, and they were there again. And I haven't been really keeping up with a whole lot of stuff because I've been so busy. But is there a Barrett Jackson auction going on right now?
I don't know.
Are they replaying from Scottsdale?
They might be replaying from Scottsdale. Let me push some buttons here and see what's going on their calendar.
Or are they playing? Wasn't the Florida auction recently?
Well, that's what I mean. There's so many of them. We used to know Barrett Jackson was in January. Now Barrett Jackson's 5 times a year.
Well, if all right, so I got today and was telling me about a car that was going through, that he saw go through Barrett Jackson this morning or last night or whenever it was, and it was a car that went through in Scottsdale. So, I mean, are people buying cars and just taking them back to the auction? I mean, to me, that don't make a whole lot of sense. A, you should know what you're buying before you buy it. And B, if it's sold at Scottsdale during prime time, chances are you're going to take it somewhere else and it's not going to bring that much or more.
Yeah, the 2019 Barrett-Jackson calendar was Scottsdale, Palm Beach, which is April 11th through 13th, Northeast, and then Vegas. So
all right, so they were they're replaying from Scottsdale, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like he's watching a rerun of Scottsdale. So it's not that, but I've been to auctions before where a guy buys a car on Friday or Saturday and thought it was a good deal and reconsigns it to try to run it on Sunday. Or he buys it on Friday and then tries to sell it on Saturday and may or may not make money on it. So some people are buying it on speculation and thinking they're good deals. There's been lawsuits over it. I bought this car for, $400,000 on Friday and I tried to sell it on Saturday and it only brought $280,000. Well, guess what? There's only two people that wanted that car at the auction and you were one of them. I think there's speculation. And if you watch some of a lot of the auction things, and it's one reason, and here I am going with a sales pitch kind of with the sports car market. If you do their platinum subscription, it's all digital. You can search any car and you can search it by VIN number to see if it's been through auction. You can and you can find out if it's one of these habitual cars that keeps flipping and flipping. And, if it's a high-end and exotic and it's been at 8 auctions in 3 years and it's different sellers, you go, wait a second, is there something wrong with the car? Or if it's been at 8 auctions in 3 years and it's always the same seller, maybe the guy just wants too much money. And then, of course, I've had conversations with people, consignment fees, transportation fees, eventually you've got to cut your losses. I think there's a lot of things to be said about cars repeating at auctions, but it's the cars that repeat that are owned by different buyers, and, face it, we're collectors, and I'm kind of one of those guys that I kind of have ADD when it comes to car collecting. I'll buy what I want today, and I guarantee you in 12 months I don't want it anymore, and I'll sell it off to go on to buy the next car. So, I might buy something at Barrett-Jackson in January, and the following January, I might sell it. I might sell it Saturday morning so I can buy something Saturday afternoon, drive it for a year. And there's collectors out there. Personally, I think I alluded to it. No, I can't do that. I don't make that much money. You guys aren't supporting the Patreon well enough for Derek, Will, and I to do that. I guess that's kind of explaining a little to Will what's happening with those cars at Barrett-Jackson. And a lot of there's so many auctions we can't keep track of what's on TV and what's selling.
Well, I don't. Well, and that's another thing that you got to think. Sorry, Will, didn't mean to.
No, that's fine.
Cut you off there. Why in the world are we rebroadcasting auctions? What is the point behind rebroadcasting the Barrett-Jackson auction from Scottsdale right now? People can catch up if they missed it, but it adds confusion into as John was just saying, it's just adding confusion, and it just doesn't make sense to me why we're doing it, other than probably the TV network thinks it's good TV and people are going to watch it.
There's been a few days that you turn on the TV, and being in Alabama, they're replaying the Alabama-Texas game from 2003 football game.
Yeah, nobody really cares about that.
Well, you're not in Alabama, but it's like rebroadcasting sporting events. Why do we do it? It's because the production's paid for. It fills up 3 hours, and people watch it.
I watch replays of football games.
Something wrong with you, Will.
I'm sorry, Will. We thought you were a busy man.
It's well, I mean, a lot of times that's the only time I can watch it, to be honest with you.
That's no excuse.
But I have in the past for sure. Now, if certain football games come on, yeah, I'm glued to the TV. I'm watching it.
I'm sorry, I got distracted. You got me on the Barrett Jackson page, and I'm watching some things go by here, and a couple of these go, oh, I've had somebody talk to me about this car. I wonder. So,
I heard there was a Dodge Dart there this past.
yeah.
Think they'll replay any of that?
Oh, I didn't see any Dodge Darts there.
Yeah. Actually, I believe they had 3 of them, and if the commercial breaks go better, it might. And I think the first time there was this green one, and they kind of overlapped a commercial break. Maybe they can adjust those. I'm going to say, while we're on this auction topic, I'm on my Facebook page the other day. I can't remember, is it Bonhams? It's either Bonhams or RM. I think it's RM. All of a sudden, they're promoting the Radwood. Now, I like Radwood. I like the movement. I like the way 80s cars and 90s cars are becoming popular. The 3 hosts of this podcast, that's where we grew up, 80s and 90s, and these are the cars we love. But now we're tying Radwood into RM, and I'm not sure I like that or not. I better make sure it is RM that's doing the Radwood before I...
Well, and whichever one it is, John, I mean, it's very clearly, and I think wisely, a marketing move, because they know that those cars are going to be the next ones coming up in the next, let's say 10 to 25 years that are going to be the auction cars. And they're getting their teeth in now to get ready for those cars to come across the auction block and start bringing reasonable money.
Yeah, I saw that pop up on, like I said, Facebook, and it kind of caught me off guard. And I saw the cars that they're highlighting there. And I totally, I guess, agree. I said, I don't understand why, but I guess I understand why, in that all of a sudden, it's RM Sotheby's. And that's not exactly an auction house I necessarily associate with the younger buyer. And maybe it's their way of, I associate Russo Steely, I associate Barrett Jackson with the younger buyer. Bonhams and RM Sotheby's, no, I don't associate. And maybe that's their way of going, hey, we kind of miss the muscle car movement. Let's go ahead and get the Radwood movement and get these people accustomed going to our auction. Because a Sotheby's auction and a Bonhams auction is a lot different than what I want to say that Barrett Jackson Russo Steel is. Those are a little bit more of a circus type auction and very entertaining. RM kind of crosses both ways, but it's RM Sotheby's. It's a merged company now. It's a little bit more upscale and a little bit more organized, and it's really, I enjoy that kind of auction. You kind of know what's going on, and you know who's bidding, and it's clear to see if chandeliers are bidding or the owners are bidding on their own cars. It's just to me, a little bit better auction. I don't know. Have either one of you really attended auto auctions in the past, or?
I've been to 2 auctions in my life. Barrett Jackson Reno, when we were there showing the dart for the Barrett Jackson Cup, and Barrett Jackson Scottsdale when we sold the dart just a few months ago. So I don't really honestly keep up with it a whole lot. Never been to a lot of auctions. I guess I'm more into the building them for other people and building them for myself. And I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it while I was there, but it's not something that's high on my priority list to attend. Just, there's none that are really that close. I don't really keep up with it online that much, but, that's just me.
And I mean, I think everybody knows. I think everybody knows my case. I've been to a number of auctions. I don't know that I could count how many right offhand, but Of course, I bought one of my cars, my antique cars, at auction. I bought a 1917 Overland, a Model 90 Roadster, at an auction in Michigan many, 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 many years ago. So, and the other thing with auctions, and I'm not going to use any auction house names, and the excessive amount of auction houses that are out there, you got to be careful which ones you go to, because some of them are not the most trustworthy. And, John's already talked about there's been some lawsuits for different things in the past, but you don't always get exactly what you think you're getting and what they're advertising. You have to be, cautious of what you're going to bid on, and you really got to know the car. Go, as John said, there are some options out there to be able to search cars and see what's going on with them, but you got to go, and you have got to look the cars over, know the cars, or take someone that knows the cars with you. I should probably say I didn't. The car I bought was not a bad car. There was some fishy things with chandelier bidding going on that I had to fight against to get the car, but the quality of the car, what the car was not an issue. But there are a lot of things you have to look at when you're going to an auction to make sure that you're not going to lose. You're not going to pay more or wind up stuck in something that you don't want to be stuck in.
Yeah, what you said there, it's one of the things. When you go to an auction, remember, it's all about money. And it's nothing. This is the lesson from Father John here. It's all about money. It doesn't matter. It's about you keeping your money. It's about the buyer getting the most money. And it's about the auction house covering their expenses and making a profit to do the next auction. Everybody is looking out for their own money. Be sure to read every detail in the fine print when you register to be a bidder. Be sure to read every detail in the fine print when you register to be a seller. Don't just read the big print and think, oh, the other stuff is just my Apple terms of service. Read every bit, because a lot of times that fine print will give the auction house the right to bid on the car up until a certain reserve price or to a certain price. Or it gives the owner permission to bid to purchase back his car. And there's some of your chandelier bidding. And what chandelier bidding means, I guess that's kind of like chandelier bidding. Chandelier bidding is the auctioneers going up, going. I got 25. I got 25. I got 25. Do I hear 26,000? Do I hear 26,000? Oh, I got 26,000. And you're sitting here going, I'm the bidder who bid 25. No, nobody raised their hand. There's no phone bidders. What happened? And what the auctioneer is doing is he's pointing to a chandelier in the room and saying he's taking a bid from this chandelier. My little air quotes are going here as Will harasses me about my hand animation here. And then all of a sudden you're bidding 27, and guess what? We're at 28. We got 28. We got 28,000. Good 28,000. Do I hear 28? Do I hear 28.5? I got 28.5. And you're going, who the hell? It's the same damn chandelier bidding on your car. And
those chandeliers have more money than you have every day of the week.
Those chandeliers have just enough money to make the owner get the number he was promised by the auction house and to make the auction house a profit. And I guess I could get in trouble here, but some of the other background things with auction houses. Okay, I put a car into an auction and I want $100,000 for it. I set my reserve at $100,000. $100,000 is, what we've agreed. The car will not sell unless we get bids for $100,000. And I've paid the auction house, $500 to consign the car, and I'm going to pay them 10% of whatever the top bid is. So basically, I'm willing to accept $90,000, and the seller's going to pay 10% of whatever their bid is. So if it bids to 100, I'm selling the car for 90. The seller's paying 110. The auction house gets $20,000. The car bids up to $92,000 and boom, it's sold. And you go, wait, my reserve was 100. Why did it sell for 92? Well, the auction house is covering that $8,000. They're going to say, okay, we sold it for $8,000. You still owe us, we sold it for $100,000. You still owe us $10,000. So they're only taking technically $2,000 from you, and they're giving you the other $8,000. It's a shuffle game, or 3-card monte, or whatever, shell game, whatever you want to call it. It's perfectly legal to do. They've just agreed to accept a slightly lower number than what the reserve is, but they're covering the money up to that reserve. And that can hurt you or that can help you, especially if you're trying to establish a value on your car. It's another little thing that, auction houses can do, and you've got to be careful of. Or the car's has a reserve at 100, so as a joke, you go, I bid 92, and the auction house sells it to you, and you go, wait, the reserve was 100. How did I buy it? I don't have $92,000. Well, the auction house is covering that $8,000. You better have 92. Be careful what you bid on. It's just amazing, and that's one thing I find fascinating about auctions is I like manipulation and strategy and strategic things and reading the fine print. And, that's just 2 examples of how auction houses work. And I had a third one, and I'll remember it here later in the show, but. Are you guys still there?
No, huh? What? No. As far as is there too many auctions? I mean, if there's cars showing up at them and the auction house is making money and people are happy, then, it's just another way of having a car show or a get together with your hot rod or your antique classic car. So, I mean, there's really not any. I guess the closest big auction for me would be like in Kissimmee. I mean, that's 10 hours away. So, I mean, maybe they need to, have them in different locations. There may be one in Atlanta, but I don't know about it. But, you'd think Atlanta would be a good place. There's a lot of money in Atlanta, or Nashville. But, and there may be auctions there. I just don't keep up with it. And I don't know if there is or if there aren't.
Yeah, I think there's an auction in Atlanta. There's usually one in Nashville. There's one in Indianapolis. There's obviously one going on in Tupelo, which isn't a yearly auction. They're everywhere.
I was going to say, if Will had been here from the beginning, he would have heard the talk about there's one everywhere. Whether it's big or little, it's everywhere.
There's not one in Gadsden, Alabama. I promise you that.
Well, Big Oak Garage needs to get one going. Let's go.
Well, Big Oak Garage and the team up there with the car show that's coming up in the fall has begun to converse with Visions and Vehicles, and that's the ultimate plan that Visions and Vehicles would have, is to bring an auction to the Gadsden area with the vintage Alabamian type vehicle.
Well, let's do it. Hey,
go ahead, Will, because I'm going to change the topic a little bit. So finish up what you.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, because what I was about to say, John might kick me in the butt anyway. So just go ahead.
All right. Well, no, my question.
We might need to discuss this off the air before we discuss it on the air.
We're going to get a short commercial break. No, what I was going to say, because Will brought up the discussion about this is just another event for people to get together, cars to sell, things like that. But I kind of feel like we're all in agreement that there might be a few too many car auctions going on right now. Maybe Will doesn't, I don't know. But I think the other question to ask here is it helping or hurting? Of course, we talk about the collector car hobby. Is it helping or hurting the collector car hobby to have this many auctions going on? And I know I mentioned before Will got here that it shows that or it likely shows that the collector car hobby is a strong hobby because there are so many, but is it good or bad for the hobby to have this many going on? And that could be even talking about, the prices. Is it inflating the prices of cars and causing a problem? What do you guys think?
I think it's a good thing. Just like if there's too many shows, it's a good thing when it comes to the collector car hobby because it makes people talk about it. We're talking about it. If there weren't, if there wasn't the feeling that there might be too many auctions in that, we would be talking about something else. But this is giving us another topic for us to ramble on another hour about. But it makes people talk about it. Will brought up, why do they replay the auctions? Will brought up somebody watched the auction over the weekend, and hey, this is what I saw go. Granted, let's pay attention to when the auctions happened and things like that. But as long as we're talking about collector cars, they're still relevant. It's when the public stops talking about them, stops caring that they're watching Barrett-Jackson, 2008 and 2019 on TV. That's probably actually wrong because the values were completely different in 08 to 2019. But as long as we're talking about it, I think it does the hobby good. As we've said 2 times and now 3 times in the show, these auctions are full of cars. There's hundreds of cars. What I've always said about an auction, it is the best car show you will ever go to, especially if you go to Arizona auction weeks. You can go there, you can spend a week, you can see 5,000 cars. If you've got to have one of those cars, you can take it home with you. You can't do that when you go to a concours. It's very tough to buy a car at a concours or even your Saturday night cruise in. But you go to an auction, you could buy that car if, you've got the cash or the credit. So it gives you, I think there's a little bit of excitement there. There's, it's an obtainable object, even if there's too many commas in the price tag for it to be obtainable. And you see such a diverse group of cars. You get to see just about, depending on the auction, you get to see them run. You get to see them operate. You can almost touch them and lick them if you want to. Don't advise licking them. You probably won't come back. My opinion is, if you look at it from the collector car hobby, you can never have too many shows. You can never have too many auctions because it keeps the hobby in discussion.
Maybe there needs to be an auction where it's only cars that you're willing to take less than $30,000.
If you can make a business plan that would work, they probably would do it. It's really tough because auctions are expensive to operate. Okay,
just at Barrett-Jackson, they're selling vendor spots for big, big, big money. I'm sure Westworld is not very cheap to rent. The town that it's in is not a cheap town to stay in. Hotels are expensive, food's expensive, everything's expensive. So, yeah, why not have it at like I said, Tupelo, Mississippi. There's one going on in Tupelo. Birmingham, Alabama, Gadsden, Alabama. Have it at a venue that, no, we're not here for the glitz and the glamour. We're here to sell cars and that's it. And if you want to be a vendor, then yeah, you can be a vendor for X amount of dollars or whatever. But, that might be something kind of neat to start up. And then you don't have to fly in on your Learjet to afford a car that goes through the auction. I know, whatever the first 3 days of Barrett-Jackson, there's a lot of cars that sell for well under $30,000-$35,000.
And see, I was going to bring that up. Barrett-Jackson has done that. They have created that under $30,000 auction. They've just laid it out in a way. And you're a perfect example with the Dart. You were run on Saturday because they knew your car would bring $100,000 plus. And if they knew your car would have brought $500,000, you would have been a Saturday afternoon car. They lay out their auction that way, and because really billionaires can't take a week off of work to sit through the whole auction. They start out on that previous Sunday or that previous Monday with lesser cars where guys can take a couple of days off of work and go in and buy them. Or the locals can come and buy some of these cars, I can't say I would travel out to necessarily buy a car on Tuesday, but I also know that's my budget. If I want a car, that's what I do. But the only reason they can do that is because they have the big dollar sponsors and they have the big dollar cars coming in on the weekends. It's really amazing how, I want to say how expensive these are to put on, but it's also, I know a lot of the backdoor operations, and unfortunately I can't discuss it, how money's made at these things. And some of them really aren't hurting, but they all have a bottom line to watch out for. So
I know they're not afraid to feed you full of beer and liquor.
Well, there's
Well, that helps the auction prices though, because then you get in a battle with your nemesis friend, Steve over across their Bill or whoever or John or across the way, and you're just drunk enough to say, I'm not going to let that SOB buy the car. I'm going to keep bidding, and so prices go up.
And they'll feed them to you as long as you want them, basically.
There's an advantage to sitting ringside at Barrett-Jackson or, well, really any of them. Sober buyers never seem to pay quite as much as a happy buyer.
And I'll tell you something else they had walking around there. Oh, I think they had every hooker out of Las Vegas in Scottsdale that weekend.
Well, that's one thing. And that you said, have an auction in Tupelo, have an auction in Birmingham, have an auction in Knoxville, Tennessee. You've got to have something for the wives to do. The wives get bored, and, wealthy gentlemen, or flip side, wealthy women with husbands. You've got to entertain the spouse. And a lot of auctions I have gone to will have women walking around displaying jewelry or watches. And these aren't for auction. These are for the people in the crowd to buy. You could literally buy, oh, honey, I'm sorry, I just paid $2.7 million for a Ferrari. Here, let me buy you this $100,000 necklace. And you can buy it right off that girl, in the aisle. Just like you're at a Cubs game buying a hot dog, they're walking around necklaces, bracelets, earrings. And you call them over, and you pass $100,000 over, and they pass it back to you just like a hot dog. But so you've got to be able to entertain the other people in the party, and that's why some of these out of the way places don't work, and why these auctions, happen in Vegas, happen during Monterey Week, happen in Amelia Island, because they're vacation destinations, and there's things to keep the spouses occupied. And
so we're gonna have an auction during the hot rod happening in Hokes Bluff, Alabama in September.
All of a sudden, I just thought of a friend of mine who's got a magazine, a website, Happenings in the Ham, the hot rod happening in the Ham. But unfortunately, you're Gadsden, so. But there I am thinking again. Sorry. Taking us off. We could do an auction. Like I said, it would be...
Ruined the podcast, John.
Yeah. I do that every week, don't I? By just being here. Are we concluding anything?
I don't know.
Here?
It would be really boring with just me and Will on here.
Oh no, is that your wife in the background, Derek?
Oh yeah, that's Christine in the background.
Oh, I don't have the camera on. Are we sure? Because Derek's traveling this weekend. We could get him in trouble with Christine if she's really not there.
I really hope that's getting edited out of the podcast.
We don't. Oh, haven't you noticed in the last 2 weeks, I've really reduced the editing.
Oh, all right, cool.
Makes it a lot easier to publish when I don't edit.
Nothing like being in a hotel in South Bend, Indiana with your wife.
Boy, that was a look she just gave you.
Oh,
Remember, she can't hear our side of the conversation.
That's
Derek.
right. She only hears Derek's.
See, now we're going to have to leave it in the podcast so you can explain it to her.
I know you're going to have to leave it all in the podcast so she can hear it. And that just will prove that it was all clean.
Oh, Lord.
Well, now that we've gotten completely off track, I think we've all agreed that there's too many auto auctions, and they are selling cheap and expensive cars, and I don't know if we've really come to any other conclusions.
I disagree. I don't think there's enough.
And then see,
How do you think there's not enough?
Because
I thought we established there was just the right amount because the cars are filling it up. It's keeping us busy and it's promoting the hobby.
if they wasn't making money, they wouldn't be doing it. So, I think there could be an auction, heck, every night, multiple. I mean, why not? Why are you shaking your head, Derek?
Because it feels right.
Hey, did my camera come back online for you guys, or are you still seeing a blue screen?
No, I see.
Oh, we've been seeing you the whole time, John.
All we're seeing is this, though. We can't really see your face. We just see.
Well, don't worry.
hands.
He doesn't see our faces either because he closes his eyes the whole time.
He's been sleeping the whole time.
That's why I just realized when I went back to the window to see Christine in the room. But we'll just go ahead and cut it there because Derek thinks there's too many and thinks the whole group's in agreement with him. Will's the exact opposite, saying we need more, especially the Hoax Bluff hot rod happening.
There you go.
Hoax Bluff's hot rod happening, because I like hot dogs.
No. No hot dogs.
No, hot dogs. Hot dog based chili.
Bring your own hot dogs.
I always do. I'm like that one basketball player that used to bring his own ranch dressing. So he wasn't sure if the restaurants would have it. I can't remember who that was. Or maybe he brought French dressing. I can't remember which. I can't even remember his name. It's basketball.
March Madness.
Oh, God. Can we just wrap this up?
Yeah, we're talking sports now. It's time to go home.
We talk cars.
And for the final thought, which is John's, which is always right, we have just the perfect number of auctions. And maybe one or two should be added to the calendar. Because it's keeping the hobby in play. So I think we're with that. We're going to wrap up. We'll say goodbye to Will. He's, as we said, skipping town. I don't know. He's got a whole staff of people. I don't know what they're going to do without him. But
I'm skipping the country, son.
Yeah, stood me up for $100 on Tuesday, and then he.
He's probably going to a country without extradition, too, so.
Oh, yeah. Easy now. I'm not telling y'all where I'm going then.
I heard he's going on a boat ride.
You want to go for a boat ride?
Now, guess what, guys? Derek's got a lobby full of people dying to hear his conversation. He ought to record it. Right. We'll release it as a special podcast. Will's got to go pack for his vacation. And I think I'm going to go watch Mom because it's Thursday night. We're recording on Thursday instead of Wednesday. Derek and I'll talk to you all next week. Hopefully, we should have a special guest. I'm hoping to have Jeffrey Hacker from Forgotten Fiberglass, Undiscovered Classics on. And Jeff can talk. And he is interesting, and some of the stuff he's saved or is saving or is looking for people to help him save. Fascinating. Will be a fascinating interview. We're putting the final, dotting the final I's, crossing the final T's on those special appearance contracts. But till then, I'll talk to everybody next week. Later.
Adios.
See you later.